The introduction to our story begins with a girl named Annie running fearfully out of her house in high heels. She looks back at it, as if she's expecting something or someone bad to come her way. It doesn't happen, though. Her dad is out there instead, asking Annie what she is doing. After telling him that everything is fine, she runs back into the house. She quickly comes out with the car keys. At night, the young girl is still driving. Eventually, she sits in the sand somewhere. Her father calls her. She tells him she loves him and mom. She also apologizes for being difficult to deal with sometimes. From those words, we know she's expecting something terrible to happen. On the next day, that terrible thing happens. She lies in the sand, lifeless, with a broken leg. We are forced to wonder what could have done that to her, and why. After that unsettling introduction, we focus on another young girl relaxing in a pool alone. She is Jay, our protagonist. Her sister, Kelly, comes over to her to learn that Jay is going out tonight with a man. Whoever he is, Kelly says she likes him. Then she comes home, where Kelly resides along with their two friends. The girl, Yara, says she's reading The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. She jokingly says it's about Paul, their other friend. In her room, Jay gets ready for her date night. The next scene has her standing outside a movie theater with her date, Hugh. She wants to play a game with him that she calls the trade game. To play it, a person starts by watching a crowd, without telling the other player. The first player has to pick a person from that crowd they want to trade places with. The other player gets 2 chances to guess who the first player picked and why they want to trade places with them. Inside the theater now, Jay guesses that Hugh wants to trade with some guy who is with a girl. Hugh tells her she got it wrong. He shows her who he picked, a little boy whose dad is helping him drink from the water fountain. His reason is that he likes the idea of having his whole life ahead of him. Yet Jay says he isn't old, being only 21. At that point, Hugh offers the other reason, that the boy could go to the toilet anytime he wants to. Sitting inside, it's Jay's turn to be the first player. She looks around to pick her person. Hugh picks a girl he says is wearing a yellow dress. The problem with his guess is that Jay doesn't see anyone like that. Even after he points to her location, all we see is an empty space. Jay thinks he is playing with her. It doesn't seem like he is, because he starts feeling genuinely uneasy. He gets her to leave the theater with him because of it. Outside, she wants to know what the problem is. He tells her he feels sick, though he looks back in worry for some reason. At night, the duo occupies a restaurant. Hugh seems to be more at peace there. For a brief moment, our attention seems to fall on a man walking outside. We wonder why that is, especially since he's too far away to properly see. On the next day, Jay walks with her sister. She tells Kelly her date was acting weird last night. She thinks something was on his mind. Kelly is interested if they engaged in romance, but Jay says they didn't. As they continue to walk, Kelly waves to a guy washing his car. On another night, Jay is with Hugh again. They sit at a shore and kiss. They go to his car to engage in intimacy. After they finish, Hugh gets out to get something from his trunk. Jay uses this time to relax, face down in the back seat. She talks about how she would always imagine going on dates. She also talks about the freedom of riding away somewhere, just enjoying the journey. Soon, Hugh joins her. Unfortunately, it's not in a pleasant way, because he applies anesthesia on the poor, unsuspecting girl. She slowly awakens later, restrained to a wheelchair outside. Hugh walks in the background with a flashlight. Once he's aware of her wakefulness, he apologizes to her. He tells her not to worry, because he won't hurt her. She needs to remember what he will say. Something will follow her. Someone gave this problem to him, which he is now passing on to her. What will follow her could look like someone she knows, or a stranger in a crowd. There is only one of it. Finally, Jay says she wants help. Whatever this maniac is talking about, she doesn't seem to care. She yells for help loudly. Shortly after, Hugh says he sees it. This makes him wheel her into the area. Jay observes a naked lady walking near some train tracks. She asks him who it is. Hugh just wheels her away. He educates her about what needs to be done to get rid of it. She has to sleep with someone to pass it along. He's worried that if it takes her life, it will come back for him. When Jay sees the lady coming closer to them, she yells out to her, asking what the strange lady wants. Hugh makes sure they stay there for a little while longer, so Jay can be properly affected by the situation. He then starts wheeling her away. As he does, he gives her one more piece of advice, to never go anywhere that only has one exit. In the next scene, Kelly sits outside, playing cards with her friends. Yara asks where Jay is, only to learn from Kelly that she's on her date. Hugh soon arrives in his car. He takes Jay out from the side, which purposefully obscures her from being seen by her friends. After doing that, he quickly drives off. Her friends see Jay on the ground in her underwear. Her hands are also tied. Of course, they rush to her aid. Afterward, the boy who was washing his car looks out of his window to see the police at Jay's house. We see Jay talking to a policeman, answering the basic questions one is normally asked. She also lies in a hospital momentarily, wearing a stupefied expression. Here is a girl who thought she was just going on an ordinary date with someone. Instead, he tricked her to rid himself of an inexplicable haunting which he passed on to her. She probably doesn't believe it yet, but she still heard him say it. On top of that, he restrained her. So that is the storm that's currently active in her mind. We also see a short scene of 2 policemen finding the wheelchair Hugh placed Jay into. Back at home, Jay stands in the washroom, inspecting herself. Suddenly, a ball slams into the window. It makes her look outside, seeing that no one is coming to collect it. She starts drinking from the faucet for some reason, while a boy stands on the roof looking into her washroom window. Later, Jay sits in school, listening to the teacher read poetry. A moment of unease arrives when she looks out of the window. From a distance, an elderly woman looks like she's staring at her. To make it more unsettling, her presence there is very uncharacteristic of a school campus. Jay is forced to exit the class because the woman comes close enough to the window, looking in Jay's direction. Walking in the hallway, it becomes apparent that Jay is being followed by this woman. She turns around to see her. She even greets her in an attempt to remove the tension. However, that attempt just confirms the trouble for Jay. Not only does the strange woman not greet her back, but one of the girls in the hallway thinks Jay is talking. That means they can't see the strange lady. She keeps coming at Jay with a disturbingly neutral expression, one that prevents someone from identifying her intention. This prompts Jay to run away. Following this, Jay visits Kelly at her workplace to tell her what happened. Paul is there too. Supposedly, they work together. Jay tells them she doesn't know the lady that was following her. She also informs them what Hugh told her, that he passed this phenomenon on to her. Kelly expresses her worry for her sister. Paul suggests he could stay over tonight to make her feel better. Both sisters simultaneously say no to that. Yet Paul says he could stay up all night in the living room to watch out for anything odd. He assures Jay that nothing will happen. The next scene shows us they agreed to his request. Paul relaxes on the couch, watching an old movie. Then Jay comes to him with her pillow to tell him she can't sleep. So he advises the girl to sleep in the room he's in. She joins him on the couch. They discuss their pastimes together until they hear some glass shattering. Paul checks the kitchen and reports back to Jay there is a broken window there, without anyone's presence. This scares Jay, to the point of her sitting in a defensive position. Paul goes to get Kelly, leaving our heroine alone. She wanders the house cautiously. It doesn't take long for her to encounter a lady slowly coming her way. This one is different, though her behavior is the same. This makes Jay run to her room, locking herself in there. Paul knocks on her door, along with Kelly. She informs them about someone being there, to which they reply there isn't. They convince her to open the door for them. Jay is terrified, asking if something is wrong with her. She thinks her sister does not believe her. Soon, they get a knock on the door. Paul equips himself with a broomstick for a weapon. Kelly asks the person behind the door if it's her mom. It is not, it's Yara. A very tall man walks behind her to frighten Jay so much that she runs away. The tall man enters the room, but no one else can see him. Jay escapes from the window. She uses a bike to start riding away. Anywhere is safer than her house. She rides to a playground, where she sits on a swing. The darkness mixed with the silence creates an unnerving atmosphere. Eventually, her friends run up to her. Jay hugs Kelly, telling her she's scared. Their mother can't know about this, she also says. Seeing someone walk in the distance, she asks Kelly if she does too. Fortunately, she does. It's that boy, who was just sitting in a car with some girl. Greg is his name. He wants to know what's going on, and Paul tells him someone broke into Jay's house. Of course, that's an insufficient explanation. We know the problem is considerably worse than that. At that moment, Jay realizes she needs to find Hugh. Later, we see all 5 of them riding in Greg's car. They ride through the town in a searching state of mind. After some time, they arrive at a house. Jay comes to some tins that hang near the window for an unknown reason. Perhaps they are there to let the dweller know something is coming. The group searches this ruined house, hoping to find something. Hugh certainly isn't there. The only thing that's there is a mess. However, Paul happens to be the one who finds something when he looks through an indecent magazine. It's a photo of Hugh with a girl. He calls Jay over to look at it. He asks if she recognizes the jacket the girl is wearing. She does. She also names the high school it belongs to. With that information, the gang takes the rational next step by going to the school. Jay walks there with Greg. They get a staff member to show them the yearbook. By doing that, they learn Hugh's real name. The duo return to the car to tell the rest that his name is Jeff. They use this information to arrive at another house. This one is much nicer than the one before. Jay rings the doorbell to soon be greeted by a lady. Jay asks if Jeff is there. Following this, the group sits outside in the grass with Jeff. He tells Jay that even though she's the one being followed, he can still see it because it's not done with him either. He reminds the girl about what she should do to pass it on. He gets worried again, knowing that if it eliminates Jay, it will return to him. The following phenomenon goes down the line back to whoever started it. Jeff wants Jay to understand he wasn't trying to hurt her. Someone did this to him, therefore he had no choice. Jay ends up asking the obvious correct question, who did it to him? It was a girl he met at a bar. He doesn't even remember her name. At that point, Greg calls him a liar and says what he's doing to Jay is not right. Jeff then starts panicking because a girl walks by. He asks if they can see her. Since they all do, he feels safer. After that, the gang rides at night. Jay didn't really acquire any new useful information with their hunting down Jeff. He already told her the important things at the beginning. Kelly asks her if she thought about passing it on. Jay doesn't know whether she should do it. The place they arrive at next is Greg's other home. Jay does the same thing she saw at the ruined house they went to, by hanging tins near the window. Thankfully, Jay gets the sleep she was robbed of from that dreadful night by sleeping in the same bed with her sister. Greg goes to the shed to collect a revolver from a box, and we then see Jay engaged in target practice with it. Greg stands by her side, telling the girl he should have been nicer to her. We wonder what he means by that. What could he have done in the past to say that now? Afterward, the group sits near the shore. A girl starts walking behind Jay from a distance. It doesn't take long for Jay's hair to get pulled up invisibly. This causes her to panic, attempting to set herself free. Paul is the hero, who uses a chair to slam the invisible girl. He gets slammed by her in return with much greater force. As the group is running away, we see the girl that no one could perceive except for Jay looks exactly like Yara. They enter the shed, where Jay collects the gun to start shooting at her. She manages to shoot her down, but since they're dealing with something unnatural, the girl gets up to continue walking. Jay closes the door, and banging starts taking place. Greg is still outside. When the bottom part of the door breaks, he peeks through. He says there is nothing out there. He leaves, prompting Jay to slowly crawl toward the door, calling for him. Instead of Greg, it's some other boy who appears to frighten Jay. She leaves from another exit before getting into Greg's car. The scared girl drives away, leaving her friends behind as they run over to her. Fate doesn't let her escape, though, because a truck backs up in front of her. She is forced to swerve into a field of crops. The next scene has her waking up in a hospital. The first people she sees are Yara, Kelly, and even her mother sleeping near her on the chairs. She also has a cast on her arm. The door to her room is open. She looks at the opening in fear, knowing that something horrible could make itself known at any time while she's stuck in bed with her handicap. Later, we see Greg being intimate with Jay. As they engage, Jay looks to the side, thinking of something else. We should remember that since they engaged in this activity, Jay should have passed the paranormal follower on to Greg. At another time, Paul watches Greg touching Jay. He feels uneasy seeing it. She asks Greg if he's seen anything. It's been 3 days, he tells the worrying girl. In those 3 days, he has seen nothing. Following this, Jay is home again. She occupies her pool, looking out to see if anything is there. We realize for her that it's no kind of life to be regularly on the lookout for something threatening. Then Greg comes to the 3 friends sitting outside Jay's house. Kelly tells him he can't come in. Jay is hiding in her room. At that point, Greg says that something happened, yet it's not what Jay thinks it is. Kelly wants to hear his opinion on the matter. Greg just says his farewell to them, showing his ignorance of the circumstance. At night, Jay watches the outside from her window. She sees Greg walking there, dressed all in white. She knocks on the window to get his attention. He either ignores her or doesn't hear the knock. He tries to open the door to his house. Since it's locked, he takes a rock to break the window. This behavior prompts Jay to run to his house. She enters the window that Greg broke through. Getting upstairs, she sees Greg's mom knocking on his door in such a way that indicates something isn't right with her. Once he opens it, she jumps on him. Jay looks into his room to see the image of his mother sitting on him. His face shows us that he has been claimed. If that is true, the follower will return to haunting Jay. She drives off outside, seeing Greg dressed in white, walking after her. Afterward, she rests atop her car somewhere. She wakes up during the daytime. The place she ended up visiting is the area near Greg's other house. Jay walks to the shore and sees a boat in the water with some guys on it. This makes her remove her outer clothes before entering the water. It's quite likely she did something with them to rid herself of the follower. Then she drives back home. As time goes by, we observe how diminished her life has become. The biggest indicator of this is her dry pool, which is also busted. She sleeps in her room with her girlfriends. A chair is set to barricade the door. Jay opens it to let Paul inside. He tells her she could pass the follower on to someone. When he says he could take it, she doesn't want to give it to him. That brings him to question why she chose Greg. He wasn't scared, is the reason she gives him. At that moment, Paul tries to kiss her, but she rejects him. That makes him remember where they first kissed. He asks her if she remembers it too. The scene shifts to the 4 of them sitting in a car, getting ready to go somewhere. It seems like they got an idea. Perhaps it could help them end the vicious struggle that is ruining their lives. As they back away from the driveway, Jay sees a naked man standing on the roof. After that, they walk through a rundown area until they climb a fence. The group enters a building and locates its pool area. In there, they start placing many electronic supplies they brought with them. Items like televisions and lamps, the kind of items that require an outlet to be turned on. They plan to toss them into the pool to electrocute the menacing follower. With everything set up, Jay enters the pool. The gang waits for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, Jay says she sees someone. Kelly asks her who it is, yet Jay doesn't want to say it. She keeps her finger pointed at the follower, saying it's just staring at her. We don't see who it is. She then says it's moving. One of the items gets tossed into the water, aimed at our heroine. Thankfully, it is a miss. Another item flies in her direction next. Soon enough, Jay gets hit by one of them. It causes the girl to bleed. Finally, we get to see the man throwing them. Paul points Greg's gun at him, with the help of Jay's direction. Trying to shoot the man, he accidentally hits Yara. He does manage to shoot his hand afterward. Contributing to the effort, Kelly uses a blanket to cover the man, which now makes his presence visible to everyone. Now Paul shoots him in the head and the follower falls into the pool. They got it where they wanted it to be. Jay tries to get out. Once she almost leaves, the problem lets her know it's still there. The man grabs onto her, pulling her deeper into the pool. Paul takes his chances, firing dangerous shots into the water. He could mistakenly hit Jay. However, he lands another shot in the follower's head. This gives Jay the chance to exit. Paul asks her if she sees it, making her slowly crawl to the pool to check. All we see is a large quantity of blood. We don't get to see if they activated all the electrical equipment that was tossed in there. With the final confrontation over, Jay engages in intimacy with Paul at a later time. When the duo is done, he asks her if she feels different. She doesn't, and neither does he. Following this, Jay lies in bed looking at a photo of her family. Her father looks like the man who came after her in the pool. That is why she didn't want to say who it was. Then we see Yara lying in the hospital, recovering from the gunshot. She reads a passage from The Idiot to her supportive friends. It is a quote about one's soul leaving their body. The final scene has Jay walking with Paul while they hold each other's hands. The couple's faces seem to show they aren't quite certain if they have escaped their ominous ordeal. From a respectable distance, we see someone following them.